Chapter 6. Fallen. Within the duplicated moment of Dr. Gaster's, this silent pocket of space and time, all that remained was a single patch of moonlight. The rest of the room had been consumed by the surging dark, so thick it was almost glossy, like solid walls of ink. Frisk held his ground between the two thrones. The child remained where he was on the opposite end of the circle, half inside that pulsing shadow. "You know who I am." It wasn't a question. Frisk did. He'd heard that soft, high voice before, in the fuzz-choked background of the laboratory tapes and the whispering flowers in Waterfall's grotto, and somewhere else. Somewhere he couldn't place. "Good. That makes this very simple." The hand remained extended. "Thank you for preserving that soul. As I followed in your wake, I was concerned that I would not be able to retrieve it before it shattered. Monsters are such fragile things. Don't you agree?" Frisk didn't answer. "But I'm here now, and I would very much like to take Asriel back." The air had become strangely stagnant, almost syrupy. Frisk had to fight for every breath. It burned cold in his throat. The child said, "You're afraid of me." He was. He was afraid of how the child remained so still that he might as well have been carved from marble, the only movement coming from his mouth as he spoke. He was afraid of how the child's words didn't quite match the way his mouth moved, like someone doing an imperfect ventriloquist act. And as he talked, there was a second voice behind the familiar one, a rotted harmonic that made Frisk's stomach churn. It sounded like a hissing fuse, or the buzzing of wasps, or the silence before an avalanche, mindless noise contorting itself into speech. And it seemed to come from everywhere at once. "It's all right to be scared. That provides incentive." The child's smile widened. "Give me what I want, and then I'll go away." He could feel his heart beating against the walls of his chest as if fighting for escape. His knees threatened to give out. But he straightened himself up, lowered his hand from his heart, and shook his head. The child's outstretched hand spasmed like an insect. "No?" The hand lowered. How curious." The shadows jumped again, chewing away at the moonlight's periphery. "After seeing the way you've acted, I thought negotiation would be worth a try. It seems I was mistaken." He brought out his other hand. Frisk saw the knife it held, the blade haloed in a faint red glow. "Oh well." The child started to walk, slow, shuffling steps like someone walking with their eyes shut. He seemed uncomfortable in his own skin. Frisk fumbled out his stick. His hand shook so badly he nearly dropped it. The shadows behind him pushed hungrily forward. There was not a breath of wind. Every life has value, and so does every death. He trod in Asriel's dust. It kicked up gray glimmer that trailed in his wake. "I wonder," he raised the knife, "what will yours give me?" "Whoa there, kids! No roughhousing in the throne room!" Frisk yelped and spun on his heel. Sans was there, leaning up against Toriel's throne, hands in his hoodie pockets. The white pinpricks of his pupils and the smooth bone of his skull seemed to glow. For an instant, the child's smile twisted, turning feral. But he stopped advancing. "Hey, Frisk," said Sans. "Sorry it took so long." His pupils swiveled to meet the child's gaze. "I leave you alone for 10 minutes, in a place that didn't exist 10 minutes ago, and you already made a new friend. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you were just showing off." He sauntered forward, past Frisk, and stood between him and the child. On the way, he gave Frisk's shoulder a brief squeeze. "I decided to check up on this place after saying my goodbyes, and boy, was the path twisted. Almost like someone was trying to cover their tracks. A good thing I'm used to finding secrets." He winked at the child. "Hi there. My name's Sans. Sans the skeleton." The child had discreetly tucked the knife behind his back again. "Greetings. I'm—" "Shush!" Sans's pupils blinked out. His eye sockets turned black as space. "I don't need me to tell you who you are. There's only one other human who'd ever be in the underground at this point in time, and I worked in the core laboratory, buddo. You think a diligent guy like myself didn't flip through those tapes in the break room every now and then? Those sure were some sad home movies I found." The child's grip on the knife tightened. Frisk could hear the tendons in his hand creak. "Never told the king what I heard on those tapes. Would have broken his big, burly heart. But I know you've been a naughty boy. Or maybe I'm actually wrong. Sans' knuckles cracked inside his pockets. The child tilted his head inquisitively. Looking at you, he said, I get a familiar feeling. Something that chills me right down to the bone. I don't even think a permanent softy like Asgore would have ever mistaken you for a human. What a strange thing to say. The child's head remained tilted. I'm clearly not a monster. So if I'm not human, then what am I? Hey, that sounds like a riddle. Riddles are great. They're like knock-knock jokes that went to college. Here, I'll throw out a guess, and you can say if I'm hot or cold. Ready? Sans' voice acquired a sinister reverb. You're a dirty brother killer. For a moment the child remained frozen. Then by inches he lowered his head. His shoulders began to shake as if he was suppressing laughter. But it was the darkness around Sans and Frisk that laughed. Mirth slid in and out of the shadows like a tangle of snakes. He said, That's right. That harmonic Frisk had heard was no longer trying to hide itself. It jumped up and smothered the child's original voice. It slithered into their ears and spread throughout their skulls. The knife came out again. The child looked up. Locks of hair at last slid away from his eyes like mud.
To tell the truth, I'm no longer certain of what I am.
Eyes so dark they seemed to be all pupil. And that blackness wouldn't remain still. It moved, wet and slug-like as he stared them down.
But, despite everything, it's still me.
Frisk? Sans edged closer to the thrones. Might be a good idea to stay behind me right now.
There's no need to be so protective. We were in the middle of a bargain. The terms were straightforward. All I want is Asriel's soul back. Then I'll leave you alone.
Well, gee, that actually sounds pretty reasonable. Sans glanced over his shoulder. What do you say, kid? Want to give the spooky little squirt Asriel's soul? Frisk clutched his chest and shook his head, eyes wide as they would go. Oof, didn't even hesitate. Sans turned back to the child. Hey, I think Frisk's playing hardball. Got anything to sweeten the deal? The child didn't answer. He remained motionless. Then Frisk heard the scrape of a shoe behind him. He turned and saw those dark and crawling eyes mere inches from his own, the child's hand reaching out to grab him. A scream rose in his throat as Sans grabbed Frisk's shirt, pulled him back. Beads of perspiration sparkled on Sans' brow.
Frisk, don't you recognize my voice?
Frisk tried to look away, but the child seemed to be everywhere he looked.
Whenever you reset the timeline, whenever you remade this world anew, I was there, in the shadow of your determination. I spoke into your ear. I gave you the will to continue, again and again and again.
Frisk felt unseen eyes crawling on his back.
I had hoped that, as time wore on, you would eventually call my name and let me in. I waited so long for my opportunity. But even now, I cannot find the rot in your thoughts. I cannot find the cracks in your heart. I cannot find a grip on your soul. How strange. How sad. There is no love in you at all. Nevertheless, it seems you found your way in the end. I am impressed. Your determination and my encouragement led us to the ending we desired. And now I am owed for my effort. I'll keep Asriel safe. It won't be like last time. Give me the soul. Give it to me.
What we have here is a little boy who can't take no for an answer, Sans said. Sans. Frisk clutched at him. It's so cold. I know, kid. He couldn't feel the chill himself, but Frisk was shivering against him hard enough to make Sans' bones vibrate. Just hang in there. He's right. I heard him. He glanced to the left. The child was there. He glanced to the right. The child was there. Whenever I did one of the big resets, for a couple of seconds I didn't feel like I was anywhere, but I could hear him talking.
Yes, I am there whenever determination can be found. I am there whenever someone calls my name, and I am always listening.
You know, you say that, but I think my brother managed to pin you down. Sans' left eye sparked as he tried to focus on the child. You're the anomaly, ain't ya? You're the one who was hunting us.
Call me whatever you like. Only my name matters. The rest is noise.
The darkness giggled again.
And what happened in there was self-defense. It was as you said, those experiments created a two-way window. The same power the doctor used to strike at me gave me a chance to strike back. You would have done the same.
A tick went off in Sans' cheekbone. His eye began to flare. But then Frisk said, "It wasn't you."
Excuse me?
"You didn't tell me to reset. I made that choice myself." Though he was still quivering, he stepped out from behind Sans. "I don't know what you did to Sans' friends, but I'm the one who's been hurting everyone else. You shouldn't blame yourself for that."
I shouldn't blame myself.
The child's smile remained rigid, but the darkness cringed back as if confused. "I'm going to give Azriel's soul back to him if he'll take it. You can talk to him then, right?"
That's not what I asked for.
The shadows lashed back. For an instant, the child's lip lifted up, exposing his teeth.
You don't get to compromise with me. Give me what I want. Do it, now!
Sans stepped forward. "I think we're going around in circles. He said he's not giving you the soul, and let me tell you from experience, Frisk doesn't say anything he doesn't mean. Do you want me to write it out?" He withdrew one hand, waved his notebook. "Got a pen and paper right here." A low, dissonant tone like stereo feedback shook the ground beneath their soles. The child's smile was fading fast. Then he brightened up again.
An amusing thought occurs to me.
"Oh, cool. Lay it on me."
It was your brother who opened the way to this place, wasn't it? That broken man.
Sans stiffened.
You know, he was doing very well in that laboratory. He might have successfully ended me if you hadn't arrived and given me the opportunity I needed. And then you came to save him, only to make him sacrifice himself. Twice you tried to help him. Twice you only helped him to his death.
The child's eyes writhed.
Isn't that funny, comedian? This is where you're supposed to laugh.
Sans did. It wasn't particularly cheery, but his long, low chuckle was sincere, and enough to eradicate the last of the child's smile. He stood at the edge of the darkness, looking lost and alone. "Oh man, if you're trying to get under my skin, then you've got your work cut out for you." He wiped at his eye socket and sighed. "Yeah, I screwed up. WD's gone now, and there's no amount of resets that'll ever get him back. But I've said my goodbyes. And let me tell you something, I couldn't have asked for a better send-off than what I got. I made my peace. Understand me?" Frisk kept looking back to make sure the child wasn't sneaking up on him again. He, too, felt more relaxed in spite of the thick, freezing atmosphere. "I've been falling back into a lot of old habits lately thanks to this kid." He jabbed a thumb back at Frisk. "Hitting the books again, using math puns. Man, I've got to stop that. Even I have standards. It's a really worrying sign." See, there I go again. "And, he added, I seem to be making promises. That's never a good idea, because if you make a promise, then you've got to keep it, no matter what, right?" The child said nothing. "But hey, let's have one more for the road. I'm willing to let bybones be bybones with what you did in the lab. But if you try to make a move on Frisk here, if you take one more step, I can promise you this." Sans stuck his hand back in his hoodie pocket. His slippers scuffed against the ground. "You're gonna have a bad time." The stagnant air filled with the sound of rattling bones. The child held his ground for a long while. The long fang of the knife seemed to suck in what remained of the light. Shadows crept through the grass like worms. Then the child stepped back.
Fine. I'll leave.
The rattling ceased.
Given the circumstances,
He
a
seemed
different path
surprised.
may be better suited.
The child cupped his hand under his chest.
Take your prize. And don't worry about me. Now I can find my own way.
Light spilled out around the child's heart, that diseased and bloody red. Somehow it only intensified the dark. Every black tendril leapt and warped like silhouettes in a candle flame. It stained the child's grinning face, made him look hollow, doll-like.
Now I don't need any of you.